due to the pandemic, we had to design online teaching units where the teachers are alone in their offices or at home, and all of the students are at home too. And in a way, it turned out to be feasible to do the lectures online by remote teaching. You know, everyone has been somewhat missing the vibe that can only be provided when students and teachers meet in person. But we have become quite comfortable using remote teaching for lectures. Now, it was a bigger challenge, actually, I'd say a major challenge, to compensate for the practical classes. Because, you know, obviously the point of practical classes in anatomy is to touch anatomical structures and to understand the three-dimensional organization. And this is where Anatomage, and in particular, Table on Cloud, has been a great help. Because, you know, the Anatomage tables, they help extend and complement such practical classes anyway, even in normal times. But right now, digital anatomy, as provided by Table on Cloud, is actually the only way to get as close as possible to touching structures and to understanding how they are topographically arranged. There is a general, let's say, a conceptual problem with remote teaching, and that is that people have to try, students have to be able to touch, or at least get as close as possible to touching structures. To moving structures around and to looking from the left and the right side, from the ventral or the dorsal aspect of a situation. And this problem could only be overcome by 3D digital anatomy. And in more concrete terms, so this is a very personal point of view on my behalf, I believe that learning works like this. You study facts in a book, and this leads to a mental representation of the facts. That is, you imagine a structure and you imagine where it is located, and you construct this all inside your mind, but then you have to test your ideas. And you have to test your own ideas of these facts by solving practical problems. And this is where the classical cadaver class is so important. It allows you to test and to extend and to refine your idea, your mental representation of textbook knowledge. And this is where digital anatomy helps always. But this is where Anatomage actually provides the only way currently. You have to test and refine what you are imagining based on what you read in textbooks. And this is where Table on Cloud in particular and Anatomage in general help a lot. If it is if it is meant to substitute for a lecture, then I record the whole 45-minute or 90-minute session. If it is meant to substitute for a practical class, then I will be in touch with the students through remote teaching for 3 hours in a row. And during those times, I first demonstrate facts, anatomical situations using Table on Cloud. And they would just watch this and ask questions. Then I would give them a problem to solve and let them think about it, discuss the problem, and then I would allow screen sharing. And those students together would find out using Table on Cloud whether or not what they were thinking and what they were concluding about a certain problem is actually verified or not. And in this way, we have an engaging and an interactive way of conducting remote teaching. For example, how certain structures in the brain and deep inside the brain are located relative to each other. And what students need to know and understand, and what they will be examined for, is what these white matter tracts are and what the names for these gray matter areas are, and how these gray matter areas that are located deep inside the brain, far away from the cortex, how these are arranged and located relative to each other. Now, one way and one classical way of doing this is scrolling through the sections and trying to come up with an imagined mental representation with some imagination for how these structures are actually located relative to each other. And for example, how this structure here looks in 3D and what it is called. Now, I show the students these sections, I scroll through the sections, and I can show them using the Anatomage concept what some of these structures look like. In this case, I use the non-clipping tool for parts of the ventricular system. Now, the ventricular system is, for example, in these sections only visible as this thin area here, and you could follow this area like this. But in the 3D reconstruction, you can actually see what it is located like, and you can see how its relative location to, for example, this white matter tract called the corpus callosum is represented. And remember that there are many more structures surrounding these ventricles. So I used some presets and added structures. In this case, I added a structure called the corpus callosum, and I can show the students how the corpus callosum is located relative to the ventricular system. The corpus callosum is blue, and the ventricular system, or parts of it, are green here. And then I added more of these presets. And note, obviously, that it wouldn't take presets. I could, rather than demonstrating what I prepared, I could also tell the students to generate such presets from scratch, which would also be a nice teaching unit. Now, this part here is visible here, and it's called the caudate nucleus. And in the 3D representation, you can now observe the parts of the ventricular system in green, the corpus callosum in yellow, and the caudate nucleus in red. And what's still missing is this structure here, which is called the thalamus. I think I should have it somewhere in here. Now I'm skipping parts of this, and I'm going to a more complete representation of all of this, because now we're seeing the corpus callosum, ventricular system, caudate nucleus, a structure called the putamen. Let's see where this structure actually is in the section. And in this way, students get a three-dimensional representation of the location of these structures. I would like to add something to this. In the actual cadaver class, which we are not allowed and not able to provide this year, there is a dissection that would look somewhat like this. There is a dissection where students get to see, or actually conduct their own dissection, where you would remove parts of the brain starting from the dorsal aspect. We would keep removing this until we see the corpus callosum and the structures located nearby. Now this, what we see here, is something that students would only get to see in the cadaver class, and using these presets here, they would be able to somewhat appreciate and get an idea for what this should look like. If we go closer to this, what we actually do, and even one step closer, then what we can see here is, as we move through cortical brain structures and get closer to deeper brain structures, what you now see here is that what I called the ventricles, or introduced as the ventricles earlier on in green, is now transparent. It's now as translucent as they are in the real dissection. So this is as close as it gets to what students would be able to see in the actual cadaver class. And in addition to just seeing what could be dissected, we can obviously now click on some of these structures and their names will be indicated. We can see where they are located in the sections. And what we can also what we can also do is ask questions that are frequently asked in anatomy, which is, what do I see when I remove a structure? And if I remove this structure called the fornix, I get a dorsal aspect of the third ventricle. I realize that I do see some of the thalamus in blue here. And overall, I think that this is a great way of not only showing the students what they could see in the actual cadaver class, but in addition to go back and forth looking at the three-dimensional organization of these structures from different perspectives.